So I'm actually gonna hide some stuff in the viewport because it's just gonna make it very slow. So we do want to show the terrain, I guess. Let's hide the debris. Let's hide embers. Let's hide the smoke buff. And we do want to show our work explode. So one. All right. Maybe actually before we start doing materials, so let's apply a material to it and then maybe add some light so we at least can sort of see what we're doing. So that might be nice. Maybe it's a good idea to first add some more lights, by the way, before we actually do some materials. So let's first go to the out network and let's just make a new redshift drop here. So I'm going to use my preset that I have here. Again, that should be in the downloads that you got with this when you got this tutorial. So this will be set up with the root folder. So it will go into the root folder, render 3D, and then the name that you're gonna put there. So let's call this Pyro to flip, something like that. And this is set up with some basic settings. So it's set up with brute force as primary GI. And secondary is irradiance point cloud. I'm not gonna super go into detail about what these are, but brute force is essentially just brute forcing rays through the scene. So just firing a whole bunch of rays everywhere. And that's going to be the most accurate, but it's going to be slow. The benefit is you don't get any light flickering or something like that. Irradiance point cloud, what it does, it sort of puts points everywhere in the scene, and then it sort of smudges them out, and then you get a much faster GI. With the downside that it might give like some light flickering, but if you use it as secondary GI, and you generally don't have any problems with that. So just keep that in mind. There's a whole bunch of videos online that go more into detail. I really recommend the videos from Saul Espinosa. So that's this one. It's in Maya, but Redshift is generally the same across every application that you use it in. So it doesn't really matter that much. So as you can see, he has a 1 hour video going into details on GI. So if you want to know more about specifics, I mean, I'm going to go over why I'm doing certain stuff, but of course I won't be going as in depth as one specific video about GI. So if you want to know more about GI, look for Saul Espinosa, and then he's going to talk about that. And he has a whole bunch of other videos also regarding Redshift. So just keep that in mind. But for now, we're just going to use brute force and irradiance point cloud. You have settings here for how many times should the light bounce. So what does that mean? Well, if light comes in here, for example, and it's going to bounce, and then, for example, it hits like it would. For example, we have a light here, and then it's going to fire, and then it's going to bounce, and then when it hits this rock, it's going to bounce again, and it's going to bounce again, and that's essentially how many bounces you can have. And of course, the more you have, the slower it's going to get. We're dealing with an outside scene here. Which, I mean, it's not going to need a lot of bounces. We might get away with even less than this. So that can stay relatively low. And the GI rays are how many, like, of those brute force rays that it's going to fire. The more you do, the less noise you're going to get in your global illumination. So just so you know, we're going to tweak all this stuff later, but let's first, I guess, configure this ROP a little bit and call this, I guess, let's call it main or something. And what we want to do, I think, is just focus this on a couple of objects. So by default, there's a star in candidate objects. That will mean if there's a star, it will render everything that has its has the eye icon on. Or don't want to do that. So this is where RNDR would come in. So if you were to do RNDR_star, then it would render every node with RNDR in there. We're not going to do that. We're just going to select a couple of nodes because we just want it to remain fast while we're working on this. So let's say that we want the RNDR. You can see it's also easy to find them if they're labeled like that. So RNDR, where is it? Terrain and rock explode. Let's select those. Candidate lights. Let's leave it at star for now. We can also do that differently, but let's see what we want to do with the lights. So just gonna do a light sun for now. I'm just gonna put it over here, something like this. Right, let's put so let's check which was our render cam again. That's cam 1, so let's call it RNDR cam. Let's check on this one. Yes, this has RNDR cam selected, so we can do that again if we want. So let's move back a little bit. All right, so let's click the plus icon, go to Redshift render view, and on the ROP, let's go to main. Of course, this is going to look pretty terrible because we don't have any materials on there yet. So we're going to use ACES. So if you don't know what ACES is and how to configure it, let me just give you a very brief overview of that. So ACES is a way to sort of manage colors across packages. I'm by no means an expert on that. I only recently started using it as well, like a couple of months ago. But essentially what you will do is you will configure Redshift to use OCI, so Open Color IO. So by default it would be to sRGB. You can see the colors look way different. So essentially what it's doing is that everything will go through the ACES color transform. And then if you do the same in your compositing package, so later when we're going to composite in Fusion, then the colors should look somewhat the same. If you're using textures, you can also convert those to ACES color space. HDRI should convert those, but we're not really going to use those. If you want to do that, I made a HTA for that, so you can get that website, timvanhelsdingen.com. So I guess so that will be this one. So I have a tools. So with my beautiful pictures. Anyway, so here's a converter for ACES. So if you just look in there, I go a little bit more into detail on what ACES is and how you can configure it. So if you want to know more on how to configure it, watch this, convert textures to ACES. I'm explaining what ACES is. So timvanhelsdingen.com, then go on tutorials, go to tools, or not, just go to tools, and then it's going to be there, and that's going to do, I already explained it in great detail over there. So watch that, then come back and then continue watching this thing. But anyway, then you're gonna, and then you're gonna put it to Open Color IO and sRGB or Rec 709. There's somewhat similar. It's a different color space, but so like that. And now let's start adding some materials. So we just have our light. Let's go to material. Let's delete the fireball material that comes by default and just type RS material builder. So this is a subnetwork, just like a VOP, that has the material builder in there. And you can see by default there's a material here. So let's call this ground. And what we can do is we can go on our RNDR terrain, render tab, assign it, just render. Beautiful. You can see we have a beautiful material now. Let's also add it to our rocks, even though our rocks are going to have a different material later, but let's just assign this one for now. And now, so you can see this will be updating. You can see if we scrub, the explosion itself is like the rocks are not animating. That's Redshift does that by default because it's faster. It doesn't have to update anything. If you do want that, you can go to out select your redshift ROP, go to the IPR tab. You can click IPR sublevel updates. If you do that, you can see we get animations. So yeah, that's essentially how that works. Yeah, so let's build some material for this. Now that we have something to look at. So I guess let's close this down a little bit so we have something more to work with. And let's start playing around.